In an area referred to as the death zone on Mount Everest, thinning snow and melting ice has revealed hundreds of bodies of those who came to conquer the illustrious mountain but never made it home.
Something was found on Mount Everest that changes everything. Something so horrifying that the world may never see the mountain the same way again. For years, climbers have risked their lives to conquer its deadly peak, but what if the biggest danger was never the freezing cold or the lack of oxygen? What if something far more sinister has been lurking, waiting, buried beneath the ice? Tune in, because what they found up there changes everything, and once you hear it, you'll never look at Everest the same way again. The ghosts that haunt Everest's frozen slopes. Mallory and Irvine weren't just taking a casual hike. They were on a mission, a daring climb to the highest point on Earth. A geologist named Noel Odell was the last person to see them alive. Through his telescope, he spotted two tiny figures moving up the mountain, looking strong, pushing through a deadly blizzard. And then, nothing. They vanished into the cold, never to be seen again. Did they reach the summit? The mountain holds its secret. Sandy Irvine wasn't as experienced as Mallory when it came to climbing, but he was a genius with equipment. He knew how to fix their oxygen tanks, which were the key to survival up there. That's why Mallory brought him along. They had a small team with them, 5 porters and a guide, but when the storm hit, warnings were ignored, and that was the last time anyone saw them. Years passed. Climbers kept returning to Everest, drawn by its dangerous beauty, and with them came eerie stories. One Sherpa, Pimba Dorja, climbed the mountain faster than anyone else in 2004. But his record-breaking journey wasn't just about speed. He saw things, shadowy figures stretching out their hands as if begging for help. Were they ghosts of lost climbers, spirits trapped between life and death? He wasn't the only one who had seen them. Sherpas and mountaineers alike have reported strange happenings, sudden, unnatural chills, unexplained lights flickering in the snow, voices, whispers carried by the wind calling out for help though no one was there. Some say Everest is cursed. Others believe it's a place where the dead linger, unable to move on. The mountain doesn't just test a person's body, it messes with their mind. At extreme heights, the air gets thinner. The brain gets confused. People start seeing things, hearing things. Scientists say hallucinations are normal in these conditions. But what if they're not? What if those visions are real? What if something is waiting up there watching? The place where most of these eerie encounters happen has a name, the Zone of No Return. Many climbers lose their lives here. The reasons seem obvious: freezing temperatures, howling winds, barely any oxygen. But what about the ones who just disappear? What about those who never make it back, whose bodies are never found? Some think Everest is just a mountain, a giant pile of rock and ice. Others know better. To the locals, it's sacred. It's not just a peak, it's a place of deep spiritual power. And sometimes it seems like the mountain decides who gets to leave and who stays forever. The danger isn't just the weather or the height. Sometimes the biggest threat is something unseen, something that waits in the ice, in the shadows, in the howling wind. Those who climb Everest take a risk bigger than they realize, because once you step onto that mountain, there's no telling what you might find or what might find you. Beyond the stories of missing climbers and strange figures, there are other unsettling discoveries. Everest has been called the world's highest graveyard. The harsh conditions preserve bodies almost perfectly, leaving frozen reminders of past expeditions scattered along the trails. Some of these climbers have been there for decades, untouched by time, their faces locked in expressions of struggle and fear. There is a particularly well-known sight, a body in a bright green jacket. The climbers who pass by call him Green Boots. His real identity is believed to be Tsewang Paljor, an Indian climber who perished in 1996 during a fierce storm. His body lies in a small cave, a silent guardian of the path ahead. To many, he is a grim warning of the mountain's dangers, yet his remains are far from the only ones. Local Sherpas understand the risks better than anyone. They have seen what the mountain can do. They have carried lost climbers back down, retrieved bodies frozen in time. They whisper of spirits that wander the slopes, forever searching for a way home. These aren't just old legends, they are warnings, passed down through generations. Everest is not just a mountain, it is something more. Some climbers claim they have felt an unseen presence, a weight on their shoulders, a shadow moving just beyond the edge of their vision, a hand reaching out of the snow. But when they turn, there is nothing there, only the wind howling through the peaks, whispering secrets that no one can quite understand. Even with modern technology, Everest remains a deadly challenge. Rescue operations are nearly impossible at high altitudes. Helicopters struggle to fly in the thin air, and rescuers risk their own lives trying to save others. Many who attempt the climb know that if something goes wrong, no one will come to help them. It is a journey where survival is never guaranteed. As climbers push toward the summit, they step over those who came before them. Some glance down, offering a silent tribute to the fallen. Others keep their eyes forward, too focused on their own battle to acknowledge the frozen faces beneath their feet. Everest remembers them all, holding them in its icy grip, refusing to let go. The mystery of George Mallory and Sandy Irvine still lingers. Some believe that Mallory's body was found in 1999, his frozen form lying where he fell. But Irvine remains missing, his fate unknown. Did they reach the top before anyone else? Did they stand on the summit, victorious, before vanishing into the storm? The answer may never be known. The mountain keeps its secrets well. Even today, Everest continues to claim lives. Every year, more climbers arrive, chasing glory, testing their limits. Some will succeed, others will become part of the legend, another ghost in the snow. The cycle never ends. The mountain waits, watching, always ready for the next ones who dare to challenge it. Everest is more than just the highest peak on Earth. It is a place where past and present blend together, where the dead and the living walk the same path. Those who climb it do not just face the cold or the altitude, they face something much older, much greater. And once they step onto its slopes, they may never truly leave. Some things on Everest have been there longer than we think.
Mallory and Irvine got lost in a hike. Most people believe that Sir Edmund Hillary was the first person to climb to the top of Mount Everest in 1953. But there might be some inaccuracies in this widely accepted story. Could it be possible that we've been mistaken all along? It turns out the truth might be a bit more complex because two English climbers, George Mallory and Sandy Irvine, could have reached the summit before Hillary in 1924. They were last seen by a geologist named Noel Odell, who used a telescope to watch them as two tiny black dots climbing higher. Odell noted that both men seemed strong and capable of reaching the summit, the highest point of Mount Everest. Sandy Irvine was more technically skilled with equipment than climbing. He was adept at fixing the oxygen systems that were vital for surviving the high altitudes. Despite his lack of climbing experience, Mallory picked him for his technical abilities, believing they were crucial for reaching the summit. Together with 5 porters and a guide, they embarked on what would become a historic climb. However, when a snowstorm hit, despite the guide's warnings to return, that was the last time anyone saw the climbers. Pemba Dordia, a Sherpa known for setting a record with the fastest climb to the summit in 2004, just under 12 hours and 45 minutes, reported an eerie experience during his climb. He said he saw shadowy figures appearing suddenly, stretching their hands out as if they were trying to get someone to help them. Dorje believes these were the spirits of climbers who had on the mountain, stuck between this world and the next. This type of experience is commonly shared among the local Sherpas and other climbers from around the world. They describe feeling sudden chills, seeing unexplained lights in the extreme cold, and hearing voices filled with fear that seem to come from nowhere. These stories continue to be told by those brave enough to face the harsh conditions of Everest. Whether one believes these stories or not, they add a grim reminder to the adventure of climbing Everest. They suggest that the mountain is not only a physical challenge, but also a path through a place that has been marked by many past tragedies. These accounts, while making the mountain more intriguing, also serve as solemn reminders of the dangers that lie in trying to reach the top. They remind climbers that Everest commands respect, not just for its height, but also for the many lives it has claimed. Many climbers have lost their lives in this harsh section of the mountain, which could easily be explained by the brutal natural conditions they face: extreme cold, fierce winds, and a severe lack of oxygen that can confuse and weaken the human body. High numbers of deaths in this area could reasonably be linked to these harsh conditions rather than to any unexplainable forces. Despite this, reports of odd visions and unexplained events keep surfacing. Could the harsh conditions lead to climbers seeing things that aren't there? Or is there actually something mysterious occurring? This question remains as persistent as the cold Everest winds among those bold enough to challenge this deadly part of the mountain. The human body and mind are pushed to limits. People may see or believe things that aren't real, hallucinations brought on by the body's stress and the mind's desperation in oxygen-starved conditions. Debates continue on whether these experiences are just tricks of the mind or evidence of something that defies easy explanation. It's important to understand that scientific ideas like lack of oxygen and bad weather are well supported by studies. These reasons show that the strange happenings in the zone of no return on Mount Everest might not be as supernatural as some people believe. Yet the mystery of these events still attracts brave and curious people, keeping the tales from this area alive. Any thoughts of a magical or spiritual experience were quickly ruined. Instead of feeling closer to something heavenly, the climbers faced a tough reality. As they went higher, trying to reach the peak, they were suddenly reminded that the mountain wasn't just there for their climb, but was a place deeply honored by its local people. Their effort to get to the top turned into a conflict. They met a group of Sherpas, the local people who live near Everest. Sherpas are known for handling the harsh conditions at high altitudes well, which makes them great guides and helpers on many climbing trips. But this time, they weren't helping. They were standing up for their cultural beliefs. The conflict intensified. The Sherpas saw Griffiths and his companions as disrespectful of their traditions and reacted with anger. This anger was not just a sudden flare-up, but was rooted in long-standing issues. Local communities often feel that foreign climbers come to their sacred mountain without respecting the local culture or considering the environmental damage their expeditions can cause. Tensions rise as unexpected challenges emerge on Everest. Everest's nightly roar. The confrontation became even more serious. The Sherpas, driven by a strong sense of duty to protect their culture, became a significant threat to the climbers. This incident showed a stark contrast to the peaceful and spiritual image usually associated with Everest. It highlighted the real tensions that can arise between climbers and local communities. The deeper complexities of climbing Everest were evident. The mountain isn't just a physical challenge, it's also a place of cultural and environmental importance. The Sherpas' strong reaction was a clear message that Everest, despite its global fame, holds significant local value that climbers must recognize and respect. This event is a reminder of the ethical challenges and the need for cultural sensitivity that come with such high-stakes adventures. The danger escalated quickly, placing Griffith and his companions in a dire situation where their lives were at risk. They were completely outnumbered and lacked any means to defend themselves. Just as the situation seemed hopeless, a group of brave climbers from Camp 2 stepped in to help. Among these rescuers was Melissa Arnott, who had previously climbed Everest 4 times. Her experience with and knowledge of the Sherpas were crucial. She could see the danger was immediate and acted swiftly to aid Griffith's group. Melissa advised them to leave the area immediately to avoid further conflict. Recognizing the seriousness of their predicament, Griffith and his group had no choice but to heed her advice. They quickly left the area, giving up on their goal to reach Everest's summit. This decision to flee, driven by a basic desire to survive, marked a profound and distressing end to their expedition. What had started as a quest for glory ended in a scramble for safety, underscoring a humbling realization of their limitations and the volatile nature of their environment. The retreat was not just a physical withdrawal, but a mental and emotional concession that their underestimation of the local sentiments had led to this unwelcome and perilous confrontation. A loud and disturbing noise terrifies the local communities as night falls over Mount Everest. This sound, which reverberates through the mountain after sunset, seems as though the mountain itself is alive and angry. To those living nearby, it feels as if Everest is trying to communicate its fury and threatening intentions. The noise was first reported by a climber who has reached Everest's summit 15 times. He described witnessing large blocks of ice and snow break off and plummet down the mountain's slopes, causing a thunderous noise. The sound was so loud and disturbing that he found it impossible to sleep. However, this frightening noise has a scientific explanation. Researchers have discovered that the noises are caused by the ice cracking and glaciers breaking apart, which becomes more frequent at night when temperatures drop. This process is primarily due to the glaciers melting because of climate change, leading to instability in the ice structures. On another note, enormous footprints, larger than those of any human, were found on Everest. Eric Shipton, an experienced mountaineer, discovered these footprints in 1951 while exploring near the Menlung Basin, situated between 15,000 and 16,000 feet above sea level. Lacking proper tools to measure the footprints, Shipton used his climbing partner, Michael Ward's boot, to approximate the size. He documented the comparison by photographing the boot next to the footprints, which showed a clear size discrepancy. This unusual finding, accompanied by some fur found in the vicinity, has sparked considerable interest among the climbing and scientific communities. The footprints add to the mountain's intriguing phenomena and continue to engage those who visit or study this majestic peak. The combination of these events, the nightly noises, and the discovery of large footprints, has contributed to a heightened sense of wonder and caution among those who encounter Everest. The locals' interpretation of these events, along with scientific investigations, paints a picture of a dynamic and changing environment at the world's highest peak, where natural processes and unexpected discoveries create a compelling story of interaction between humans and nature. Ward reported finding a footprint much larger than that of a typical person. The shape was unusual, with the toes out of place and the big toe particularly misaligned and oversized. This leads to a pressing question. How is it possible for someone to walk barefoot in such extreme cold? His ambition was not just a dream. He had a proven track record of climbing mountains that would scare off many experienced climbers, including the difficult Annapurna. He had many awards for his bravery and climbing speed, showing his skill. When Sturck climbed, he did so with such speed and grace that it looked easy for him to move through dangerous paths. His unique way of climbing and the impressive results he achieved not only pushed the boundaries of what could be done in mountaineering, but also earned him a great deal of respect from other climbers. But in April 2017, something went terribly wrong. Sturck died while climbing on the western route to Everest's summit, a path he had successfully navigated before. His death was confusing because he was so experienced. Reports said he slipped and fell hundreds of yards to his death. The exact reason for his fall remains unknown. Was it because of slippery ice, or maybe he didn't have enough oxygen? Since his climbing partners were too far away to see exactly what happened, they could only bring back his body. His death was a huge loss for the climbing community. The absence of toilets or any plumbing systems means that human waste is left in landfills, open pits, and makeshift dumps. This leads to serious contamination of the soil, making it toxic and unfit for use. Water sources near the area become polluted and dangerous to consume. The consequences for human health are significant. Many climbers get sick from drinking the polluted water even before they reach their base camp. The local communities, who rely on tourism for their income, face the same issues with waste management. They lack the resources and infrastructure to deal with the increasing amounts of waste left by tourists. These communities are forced to watch as their beautiful mountain slowly turns into a huge garbage dump. With no effective measures in place to handle the situation, Mount Everest's environmental health is deteriorating rapidly. The diverse life forms that inhabit and surround the mountain are at risk as the quality of the environment continues to decline. If this trend continues, the iconic image of Mount Everest will be overshadowed by the impact of unmanaged waste. The mountain, known worldwide for its breathtaking views and as a symbol of natural beauty, will lose its appeal. This could lead to a decrease in tourism, which many local economies rely on. The situation needs urgent attention to preserve the health and beauty of this world-renowned mountain. Without change, the future of Mount Everest looks bleak, potentially turning into a landscape marked more by waste than by its natural splendor. Another surprising development, NASA discovered marine fossils on the very top of Mount Everest. This finding has caused quite a stir among scientists. The fossils, which came from sea creatures, were found at the highest point on Earth, raising the question of how they got there. This discovery has led to different opinions and discussions. Some people believe that these fossils confirm the story of a great flood described in the Bible's book of Genesis. However, others are more cautious and question the connection between these fossils and ancient stories. NASA, on the other hand, sees these fossils as evidence supporting the theory of plate tectonics. They suggest that the fossils prove that the area where Everest now stands was once under the sea. According to this view, the movement of the Earth's plates pushed the land upward, lifting it from beneath the sea to form Mount Everest. This explanation helps us understand the long-term changes that occur on our planet, showing how the Earth's surface can transform dramatically over millions of years. Do you really believe that Maurice Wilson, a soldier with little more than hope and faith, could scale the heights of Mount Everest? His story starts in 1932, when he claimed that prayer and fasting healed him from an illness. Filled with this belief, he decided in 1934 to tackle Everest despite having almost no experience in climbing mountains. He was convinced that some higher power would help him reach the top. He managed to climb up to 23,000 feet before being stopped by a huge wall of ice. His guides, the Sherpas, begged him to turn back, warning him of the dangers ahead, but Wilson ignored them, driven by his strong belief. He even wrote in his diary about making one last attempt to climb higher. Unfortunately, his determination wasn't enough. Overcome by exhaustion, he died in his tent a few days later, showing that sometimes faith is not enough against the might of nature. The quest for adventure pushes climbers to try the unimaginable, the thin line on Everest's slopes. Then there's the tale from 1975, with British climbers Dougal Haston and Doug Scott, who made it to the top of Everest, but did so too late in the day. They had to spend the night in an area known as the death zone, where the air is too thin to breathe properly and the cold is extreme. They had run out of oxygen, food and water, and their heater had stopped working. Expecting the worst, they dug a hole in the snow to try to stay warm and alive until morning. In those desperate hours, they felt as if someone else was with them in that hole, someone kind and comforting who even gave them advice on how to survive. They made it through the night, believing this unseen presence had saved them. Other climbers have also felt this presence in their moments of greatest need, and now think of it as a kind of guardian angel. Marco Siffredi set out to conquer Mount Everest again, not through climbing alone, but by snowboarding down one of its steepest and most unforgiving sections, the Hornbein Couloir. This choice was bold and filled with risk, especially considering he chose the late summer for his climb, a time known for deeper snow, but also more dangerous weather conditions. Marco's decision wasn't just about seeking thrill. It was about pushing the boundaries of what was possible in extreme snowboarding. For many years, scientists have been using advanced technology and DNA testing to try and understand these strange footprints, but they have yet to find any clear answers. Adding to the intrigue, when they analyzed some fur collected by another explorer named Shipton from the same area, it didn't match any known animal species. This unidentified fur has sparked discussions about whether it could belong to the Yeti, said to inhabit the Himalayas. Despite considerable efforts, this remains an open and unresolved issue. On another note, Jim Davidson shared his experience of the most frightening day of his life while climbing Mount Everest in 2015. During his ascent, a huge earthquake struck, measuring 7.8 on the Richter scale. This earthquake caused the deaths of 18 people who were on the mountain with him and around 9,000 more in Nepal and its neighboring countries. Davidson found himself stuck on the mountain for nearly 2 weeks, during which he focused on helping other survivors. This event, marked by fear and devastation, would typically discourage anyone from returning. The halted expedition tests the climber's resilience. Davidson's Everest conquest. However, Davidson, even at 50, did not give up on his passion for climbing. He faced this life-threatening challenge with determination. After going through extensive training to better prepare himself for the harsh conditions of Everest, he bravely returned to the mountain just a year later. His commitment highlights the unyielding human spirit and the unique challenges mountaineers face when tackling such formidable natural environments. Davidson's story is not just about personal survival, but also about his unbroken resolve to achieve his goal of reaching the summit, despite the overwhelming odds. For 12 long hours each day, he dedicated himself completely, driven by his deep desire to reach the top of Mount Everest. Finally, his efforts paid off when he reached the summit and sent a message to his wife, proudly stating, "I am standing on top of the world, the highest point on Earth." When you think of Mount Everest, you might not immediately think of animals living there. The mountain is known for its extreme heights and the harsh conditions that seem impossible for any creature to survive. Yet, despite the freezing temperatures, the thin air, and the overall inhospitable environment, some animals have managed to make a home there. At the incredible height of 29,029 feet, you can find creatures such as the Himalayan jumping spiders. These spiders have evolved over thousands of years, changing their bodies to cope with the cold and the lack of oxygen. Their survival is a testament to the incredible adaptability of life. In 1924, members of a British expedition found a type of grasshopper living as high as 6,700 feet on Everest. This was an unexpected find, but it serves as a reminder that life can adapt to even the most extreme conditions. Life flourishes even in the most difficult places, not just for small, tough creatures, but also for larger predators. Among these are the snow leopard and the Himalayan tahr, a big animal with horns, both of which are well suited for climbing the steep, rocky cliffs of Mount Everest. These animals move easily across the mountain's different heights. Near the bottom of the mountain, Himalayan black bears have established their territory. They sometimes share this space with the Himalayan tahr. Further down, at lower altitudes, lives the rare red panda, which looks similar to the binturong. Unlike other large animals that avoid the top of the mountain, these red pandas have adapted well to the risky conditions of their high-altitude home. Rewinding to a year before Sir Edmund Hillary and Tenzing Norgay became famous for their 1953 ascent of Everest, there was a lesser-known expedition by the Soviets in 1952. They aimed to climb Everest from the north side. Their mission was more than just a climb. It was to place pictures of Stalin and Lenin on the summit, asserting their country's dominance in a strong and clear way. This was not merely a mountaineering achievement, but also a political statement, combining the goals of national pride with the challenge of reaching the highest point on Earth. The Soviets' attempt to plant their leaders' images on the summit was a bold political move, intended to show their power and extend their influence to the top of the world, quite literally. They climbed the mountain and set up their final camp at 26,000 feet. Unfortunately, they never returned. Disappointingly, the Soviet authorities refused to acknowledge these men who had died trying to bring honor to their country by reaching the highest point on Earth. The only evidence of their attempt to climb the mountain came from an article by Evgeny Gibbonreiter in the Alpine Journal, published in 1953. Their fate was unknown until 2017, when a shocking find was made. A team looking for a Slovak climber who had died from altitude sickness found 4 dead bodies in a tent at the 4th campsite. Oddly, no climbers were reported missing that year by any official agencies, which made people wonder about the identities of these dead men. The Nepalese Ministry of Tourism quickly stated that these were climbers from the previous year's expedition. This simple explanation was insufficient for those who were puzzled by the lack of a search or any official record of these men. In the climbing community, it is uncommon for climbers to go missing without any effort to find them or to remember them. Even now, it is not clear who these 4 bodies were or if they were part of the Soviet expeditions, leaving many questions unanswered about the official explanations provided. Julius Sturck, known as the Swiss Machine, is celebrated for his exceptional climbing skills, achieving legendary status among climbers. His remarkable achievements in the mountains are widely respected and inspire those looking to pursue climbing. His name is frequently mentioned in discussions about great mountaineers, and his legacy continues to influence new generations of climbers. New determination drives climbers to their limits. Maurice Wilson's ill-fated Everest attempt. Ueli Steck was a climber with a big goal. He wanted to be the first person to climb both sides of Mount Everest in one go. Despite warnings from his experienced Sherpa guides, who sensed the increasing dangers from the worsening weather, Marco pressed on after reaching the summit. His determination to descend, despite the risks, highlights a troubling trend in extreme sports. The fine line between courage and recklessness is often blurred. As he began his descent, the last image his team had was of him fading into the cloud cover, a moment that marked the beginning of his final, ill-fated path down the mountain. His disappearance brings up critical questions about the motivations behind such extreme risks. Are these acts driven by a love for the sport, a desire for fame, or an intrinsic need to face and overcome the most daunting challenges? Marco's case particularly illustrates how extreme athletes often pursue their passions with a disregard for the potentially fatal consequences. The Hornbein Couloir, known for its deadly track record, represents not just a physical challenge, but a formidable natural barrier that many have respected, and some, like Marco, have dared to challenge. His attempt to descend Everest in this manner was unprecedented, and it brought to light the extreme levels of danger these athletes are willing to face. More than half of the deaths on Everest happened during descent, a statistic that underscores the peril of the mountain, not just in reaching the summit, but in returning from it. Marco Siffredi's tale is a vivid reminder of both the majesty and the menace of Mount Everest, as well as the delicate nature of human bravery. His remarkable achievements underscore a harsh lesson about the boundaries of human stamina and the high cost of extreme adventures. His story, though filled with pioneering feats, also warns us of the dangers of extreme sports and highlights the importance of balancing ambition with safety. These stories, brimming with risky ventures, send a clear message. There is a thin line between heroic courage and reckless danger. They are loaded with thrilling episodes and stark alerts about the unforgiving nature of Everest and the common human error of underestimating such lethal environments. They serve as a reminder that while the mountain can stir admiration and provide a backdrop for incredible accomplishments, it can also easily take lives. The following year, Marco decided to snowboard down the dangerous Hornbein Couloir, disregarding advice from the Sherpas who warned him of bad weather and his apparent exhaustion. He set off on his snowboard in the couloir and then vanished without a trace. The Sherpas could only speculate if an avalanche had claimed him. The landmark known as Green Boots on Mount Everest acts as a stark illustration of the mountain's perilous conditions. It denotes the last resting place of Tsewang Paljor, an Indian climber who perished there in 1996. Positioned in a small cave along the route, his neon green boots remain visible to passing climbers. This site is more than just a geographic coordinate. It serves as a moment for climbers to confront the real and present dangers they face. Tsewang Paljor was part of an Indian police team aiming to conquer Everest with great hopes but limited experience. During their climb, they were engulfed by a severe blizzard. Despite deteriorating conditions, the team pressed on, but tragically, Paljor and most of his teammates succumbed near the summit, overtaken by the storm. Leaving the bodies of Paljor and over 200 other climbers on Everest has sparked continuous debate. Preserved in the icy conditions, these bodies inadvertently guide others to the summit. Nonetheless, their use in this way prompts difficult questions about respect for the deceased and consideration for their families. The harsh terrain and the substantial costs involved make it nearly impossible to retrieve these bodies from such extreme heights. This moral quandary deepened with the death of David Sharp in 2006, who perished in the same cave as Paljor. His passing was contentious as many climbers walked by him, either unable to assist or mistaking him for Paljor. This incident highlights the intense difficulties and ethical dilemmas climbers face at such extreme altitudes. Is it ethical to leave the bodies on Everest for practical purposes? Leave comments and subscribe to join the debate and share your thoughts on this controversial issue.